Hi, my name's Al Hamilton. I've been involved in town affairs for about 25 years. I've served as the member and chair of the Capital Budget Committee, member and chair of the Advisory Committee, and I currently sit on the Select Board. Over the past year or so, there have been a lot of discussion about the NARI project, and a number of people have asked about the big picture. That is, all of the things that we are thinking about doing and how we go about financing them. To date, I haven't seen any comprehensive analysis, and so over the last month and a half or so, I've been working on pulling together the data to do so. And what I'd like to do is to talk about town debt, the big picture. So I've provided a 15-year forecast of all of the things that we think we might like to do. My purpose here is to really have a fulsome presentation on our debt capacity. Debt capacity, like other financial metrics, is a limited resource. It needs to be used carefully. I want to provide a picture of our current and potential uses of debt over the next 15 years, and then compare those with financial guardrails. With one exception, most of the data that I've used comes from the town treasurer. I've made some corrections to errors when I've found them, and I've made a forecast of equalized value. More on that in a minute, but it will prove to be immaterial. However, I want to be clear, this analysis is mine and mine alone, and I take full responsibility for it and any intended errors. So the first question is, what's debt? What counts as town debt? Over the winter, I participated in a group of town employees and a few others to try and come up with financial guidelines for the town. This is something that bond counsel and bond rating agencies want us to do. And it turns out that the state actually provides us with a number of guidelines that we can use in setting our financial policies. One of them is that we need to count all of the debt of the town, not just the debt funded by the general fund. So there are multiple classes of debt. There is debt that is clearly funded by the general fund. For example, the debt we're paying on the public safety building. There's also debt that is funded by special funds, either the CPA or water funds or the ambulance fund. And then also we need to include, and again, these are consistent with the state guidelines, our share of debt for our regional entities. Those would include Algonquin, Assabet, and if the regional dispatch system ever incurs debt, it would include our portion of that debt. Again, all of this debt, whether it's directly funded by the general fund or it comes out of special funds, is ultimately backstopped. It's no different than if you were to sign to endorse a loan for one of your children buying a car. The taxpayers of the town of Southborough are ultimately on the hook for all of these debts. The state provides us with a number of guidelines with respect to how to assess our debt and our debt policy. There are really four that are of significance. The first guideline is do not borrow for a term longer than the life of an asset. This is the equivalent financially of motherhood and apple pie. Don't finance a truck that you think is going to last for 10 years, for 30 years. We don't do that, and it's not really a material concern. The next one is to measure debt as a percentage of equalized value. Equalized value is the sum of the value of all of the taxable property in town, and then comparing that against the total outstanding balance of your debt. By law, this sum may not exceed 5% except for funding a school, and the state indicates that if that ratio exceeds 4%, the town would be in what they would describe as financial stress. The last set of guidelines relates to debt service, that is what we pay in principal and interest, as a percentage of the general fund. The total debt service should not exceed 10% of the general fund revenues, and of that 10%, 2 to 4% should be reserved for capital maintenance. Capital maintenance means taking care of our existing infrastructure, whether that be pipes in the road or a roof on a building or any of the or replacing a dump truck. There are, in my analysis, three broad classes of debt. There is the existing debt, the monies we've already borrowed and we're going to have to pay back. Then there is new debt related to capital maintenance. That is capital maintenance that we know is coming sometime in the next 15 years, and we will likely have to finance with debt. Those include school roofs. Every school roof in our system will probably have to be replaced in the next 15 years. It's just roofs get to be 30 years old and they need to be replaced. HVAC systems are similar. Ambulances, and then there is an emerging recognition that we have both water and stormwater issues throughout town. We have about over 80 miles of water mains in the road, and they're worth about $125 million, and they need to get replaced at least once every 100 years. Same thing is true for culverts and stormwater drainage. In total, the replacement value of our buried infrastructure is on the order of $250 million, and it does need to get maintained and upgraded and replaced on a regular basis. We've currently estimated that we'd need about $1.5 million a year going forward every year, which would be financed with debt, to maintain our water and our stormwater systems. And then there are new endeavors. And there's NERI, obviously the subject of a lot of debate today. Choate Field, we have $1.5 million to upgrade Choate Field in the forecast. There's discussion of taking out debt to upgrade our roads and our sidewalks on the order of $10 million, and a wastewater facility. There are some other things that I have not included in here which we should carry in the back of our minds. Again, this is a forecast, so we're trying to figure out exactly what we're going to do. So, for example, there's no money in here for an upgrade of Finn. There's no money in this current forecast for a library upgrade, but we should carry those in the back of our minds as we go forward. So let's proceed. This is a picture of the total debt of the town. Today, the total debt of the town, that is the outstanding balances of what we owe, is on the order of $34 million. If you look at this chart, you're going to see these colors repeated. The bottom chart, the blue, is our existing debt. Most of that, a big chunk of that, is the public safety building, but there's other debt that comes along. The next one up is our estimate, my estimate of capital maintenance. That's the orange. The gray is the expected debt of NERI, and the yellow is the new programs other than NERI. I've separated out NERI because obviously it's of interest today, but the gray and the yellow represent the new programs. First, there's some good news. If you look at the debt to equalized value, that is the value of all of the property in town, which is on the order of $4 billion today, we are in good shape. We never approach 3%, so we remain well below the 4% fiscal guardrail. It does dramatically increase. It's no surprise, if we're going to take on just shy of $70 million of debt for NERI, our balances are going to go up. So far so good. Our debt to equalized value ratios look good. Now let's talk about debt service. The first thing you'll notice about this chart is that it's shaped differently. And the reason it's shaped differently from the total balances has to do with differing maturities and the ways in which we would actually go about structuring particularly large capital project debts. Currently, we are paying about $4.2 million a year to service our debt. That would rise in 29 to about $10.5 million, and ultimately to $14.2 million in fiscal 33. That's a pretty hefty increase, but then again, the proposal or thought is that the town would borrow a significant sum of money. The challenge is that the debt service blows through that 10% guardrail. Again, our existing debt is just slightly under 6% right now. I think it's about 5.7%. It's going to taper off, particularly as we pay off Algonquin and as the budget rises, and the public safety building will be a smaller and smaller portion of the budget. But the capital maintenance funds stay right around 3%, which is really right in line with the state guidelines, where, remember, they suggest that we should reserve 2 to 4% of this debt service capacity for capital maintenance. NERI crosses the 10% line, and the other new projects also cross that 10% line, rising to just about 16% in fiscal 33. That's the challenge that the community faces when it comes to debt service. So in summary, the analysis is actually quite robust. If you make moderate changes to interest rates or growth rate assumptions, the underlying message does not change. From a perspective of percentage of equalized value, we are okay. We have debt capacity. From a debt service as a percentage of the general fund, we have a problem. If you believe that the state debt service as a percentage of general fund guidelines are a meaningful guardrail, then there will be pressure to reduce debt financing. We cannot stay within those guardrails and do everything we want. It's going to mean, in all likelihood, that there would be significant pressure on the capital maintenance portion of that, which means that we would, instead of financing equipment and projects, we would have to pay for them with essentially current revenues. That would mean that we would accelerate the payments of those, which would have an impact on taxes. We cannot do all of the things that we want to do in the next 10 to 15 years and stay within this guideline. Each of these projects has an opportunity cost in terms of making it increasingly difficult to do the others. Rising debt service as a percentage of our general fund will also put significant pressure on operating budgets. It will also, of course, not surprisingly, impact our taxes. It's difficult to give an exact number because the sources of funding vary. A wastewater treatment plant, for example, would largely be funded by disposal fees, or that is similar to water. But things like the Choate Field or NERI or the roads would have significant portions of that debt service from the general fund. And then finally, we have to consider whether blowing through these guardrails might impact our bond rating. There is some evidence to suggest that if we have a financial set of policies and then we ignore them, the bond rating agencies will not look favorably upon this. My goal in this presentation is not to advocate for any one particular project or another. It is to make sure that when we vote on May 10th, that the electorate, that is the town meeting members, have a picture of all of what the big picture is of our debt service and our debt capacity, so that they can make an informed decision on the 10th. Thank you very much.